Hello guys, this is part 3 from question 7 to question 10. These questions are a bit more difficult than the ones we saw in the previous questions. However, everything is doable. Now let's start with the first question. Okay, so human blood contains red blood cells and white blood cells. Remember, red blood cells transport oxygen and white blood cells are for the immune system. Give 3 differences in structure between red blood cells and white blood cells. Well, red blood cells have no nucleus, whereas white blood cells do. Please note that you only need the highlighted parts to get 1 mark. The rest, which is unhighlighted, is just extra information for you to know. And also other alternative answers. So, the second point is red blood cells have a biconcave shape. So a red blood cell will be a disc. It's a disc. However, in the middle, it will sort of be like this here, like a shape. Like this, it will be inwards like this. Almost like a donut with something in the middle. Okay, whereas red blood cells are irregular. Red blood cells are smaller than white blood cells. Also, you can see by the diagram above over here, these are real images from a microscope showing you the differences between the white blood cells and the red blood cells. Okay, now scientists collect data from men and women living at different altitudes. The scientists determine 1. The mean mass of hemoglobin in 1 liter of blood. Second, the mean number of red blood cells in 1 liter of blood. The table gives the scientists' results. Okay, so we have our altitude, 0, which is at sea level, 1,890, and then 2,270. So the altitude is increasing. As altitude increases, remember that if you're on a mountain, there's going to be less oxygen available, which means that your body is going to need to produce more red blood cells to be able to carry more oxygen to your brain. This is why a lot of people are not successful when they go to Mount Everest, or they carry oxygen tanks with them, or it's like an oxygen can where they just breathe extra oxygen, because at higher altitudes there's less oxygen, meaning less respiration. Okay, so we have men and women, and then we have our number of sample. Okay, so the blood volume of a woman living at an altitude of 1,890 meters is 4.3 liters. Calculate the total number of red blood cells in this person. Give your answer in standard form. Notice in the mean number of red blood cells in 1 liter, it's times 10 to the power of 12. This is standard form. Okay, so red blood cell number is going to be liters times the mean number of red blood cells per liter. So for women, we have liters, which is 4.3, and then the mean number of red blood cells, which is 5.2. So we're going to multiply 4.3 times 5.2 to give us 22.36. However, this will be rounded. Since the 6 is greater than a 5, it's going to round the 3 to a 4, so it's going to be 22.4 times 10 to the power of 12, because it says standard form, and if you read over here, it's given the mean number in liters times 10 to the power of 12. So technically all the numbers you see are 4.84 times 10 to the power of 12, 5.20 times 10 to the power of 12, etc. Now the second part is calculate the percentage difference in mean mass in 1 liter of blood in men living at 2,270 meters compared with men living at sea level. Now, when you see compared with men living at sea level, compared, hint compared, okay, you're gonna write the value of the men living at sea level as your denominator when you're calculating your percentage. So, and when they say the percentage difference, know that you're gonna have to substitute something. So we have 151, which is the mean hemoglobin of men in 2,270 meters in altitude. So 151 minus 148 equals 3. 3 over the men living at sea level, which is 148, We're going to divide them together times 100, which gives us 2.03%. Okay, discuss the relationship between altitude and mean mass of hemoglobin in 1 liter of blood and the number of red blood cells in 1 liter of blood in men and women. Okay, so use the table, use data in the table and your own knowledge. There's a lot of your own knowledge questions. However, usually your own knowledge, like this sentence, honestly, you never know. Like you might be watching a documentary and then suddenly this knowledge might be tested on in the exam, or your teacher told you a random fact which you can use. I find like that's pretty interesting. Okay, so this study is done with a large sample, making the results reliable. Usually, when the sample size is 1,000 and above, then the study is reliable. If it's only done on 5 people, then that's unreliable. Okay, so the second point is, however, there is no information on age or body mass. These are really important factors. The third point is hemoglobin increases as altitude increases, since there is less oxygen available at higher altitudes. The, the final point is hemoglobin levels must be higher to enable aerobic respiration. Okay, question 8. Cystic fibrosis, CF, is a condition that affects the mucus produced in the lungs and in other organs. The condition is caused by a recessive allele. So over here, I'm going to be using F. Okay, so FF lowercase is homozygous. Homo means same. Okay, recessive means something that's repeated. So it's going to be FF. So someone who has FF alleles means that they would have cystic fibrosis. So state what is meant by a recessive allele. Recessive allele is an allele that is only expressed if present as 2 copies. So if it's homozygous, it will be expressed. So we call that homozygous recessive. Okay, the diagram below shows a family pedigree. Okay, some people in this family have cystic fibrosis. Okay, so from the question, from the question and the start of the question, it hints at you that A and B, which is the mother and the father, they must both be carriers. Okay, because if one of them is not a carrier, then they wouldn't have the child C, okay, who is infected. Okay, so that means the father and the mother, they must be capital F dominant, and then they carry the allele for cystic fibrosis, which is going to be lowercase. Okay, so we're going to draw our Punnett square. We have F capital and F lowercase for the father, and then F capital, F lowercase for the mother. You're going to draw your Punnett square. We have over here, okay, we have FF, both capital. So if this is homozygous dominant, okay. However, in this case, this person is safe and he won't have cystic fibrosis. They won't give cystic fibrosis to the children. However, over here, they are cystic fibrosis carriers. However, it is not expressed as their phenotype. Okay, same as this. And over here, this person over here has cystic fibrosis and carries cystic fibrosis. Okay, use the pedigree to determine the genotypes of individual A, B, and C. So as we said before, A is capital F, lowercase f, B capital F, lowercase f, and C, since cystic fibrosis is recessive, okay, and lowercase, that means the only way to get cystic fibrosis is to be recessive homozygous. So it's FF. Okay, now individuals E and F have a third child. Draw a genetic diagram to show the genotypes of E and F, the gametes they produce, and the possible genotypes and phenotypes of the offspring. This is the same thing exactly that I drew on the previous slide. Okay, so the genotype is for the parents. So we have capital F, lowercase f, and capital F, lowercase f. The phenotypes are going to be capital F, capital F, lowercase f, capital F, lowercase f, and lowercase ff, which is, again, homozygous recessive. Homo meaning same, recessive meaning repeated. Now, both parents must be heterozygous, okay? Hetero means different. So both parents must be heterozygous, or else child H would not have cystic fibrosis and the question wouldn't even make sense. Next question. Okay, the gene for cystic fibrosis affects many different body systems, including the digestive system and reproductive system. The mucus that is produced in the pancreas is much thicker and blocks the pancreatic duct. Explain the effects this would have on human digestion. Okay, so this question knows and assumes that you know the functions of the pancreas. Now you have to apply your knowledge based on the pancreas and the human digestion. Okay, so the pancreas produces enzymes such as amylase. Okay, how do you know it's an enzyme? All enzyme end with A's. ASE, enzyme. Okay, so due to the pancreatic duct being blocked, less amylase will be produced, meaning less digestion of starch to maltose and glucose. Okay, maltose and glucose are much smaller and they're soluble, whereas starch is insoluble. The result will be a lower absorption of glucose. Okay, cystic fibrosis can result in the production of thick mucus, which builds up in the cervix. Explain the effects that will have on reproduction. So, this will obviously reduce the chance of pregnancy. That's 1 mark over there. Now we will explain further. Since the sperm cannot enter through the fallopian tube. So, the sperm must travel this direction, or this direction, and enter the ovary. So if there is mucus over here, it will create a blockage. Okay. Question 9. Students investigate the effect of mineral ions on plant growth. They use 4 solutions A, B, C, and D. A is a complete mineral solution that contains all of the mineral ions that a plant needs to grow normally. B is a complete mineral solution without nitrate. C is without magnesium. D is without iron. The plant they use is duckweed, which grows on the surface of water. This is the student's method. Place each of the 4 solutions A, B, C, and D into separate jars. Float 5 plants of duckweed in each jar. Use plants with the same number of leaves, in the same size, and are healthy. So, same number of leaves, use the same plants, same size, and are all healthy. The species is duckweed. It's a generic name. Cover each with a plastic film. So we have our plastic film, our duckweeds in the water, and then our culture solution. Put the jars containing the plants in sunlight. Why is it in sunlight? For photosynthesis. After 4 weeks, count the total number of leaves in each jar. Make a note of the size and color of the leaves in each jar. State 2 variables the student kept constant in this experiment. Well, the first one is sunlight. Okay. The second one is the same species of plant, which is duckweed. Okay. They could also ask this using abiotic factors. So they would be like, what are the abiotic factors that are constant? Okay. Explain why the student used complete mineral solution rather than distilled water to compare the effects of lacking a mineral ion. Well, complete mineral solution contains all minerals to produce ideal growth. Distilled water does not contain any minerals, meaning the plant would not grow. Explain why the jars are kept in sunlight, so that photosynthesis can occur, okay? Meaning glucose is produced for respiration to occur. State the independent variable in this investigation, okay? The independent variable is what you change, okay? Independent, in charge of. Independent, in charge of. It's what you're in charge of, okay? So in this experiment, it is the mineral that is missing, okay? Notice how in the question it was like, oh, missing nitrate, missing magnesium, missing iron, okay? That's what they're changing. So the students record the total number of leaves in each jar. They classify the leaf as large, medium, and small. Okay. They record leaf color as how green the leaves were between 0 for white and 5 for dark green. The students' results are shown in the table. We have the first one, mineral lacking, so none, so it has all the minerals. Total number of leaves is 13. The leaves, obviously, since they have all the minerals they need, it's going to be large and it's going to have a very nice green color. Okay. Nitrate, notice how it's much more smaller and the leaf color is going to be yellowish because when plants don't have enough nitrate, they will turn yellow because nitrates are needed for protein synthesis, and proteins are needed to make chlorophyll, which is used for respiration, for photosynthesis. Okay, so some of the observations, such as number of leaves, are quantitative, and some, such as leaf size, are qualitative. Give the difference between quantitative and qualitative results. Quantitative is something that you can count, okay? So quantitative is the number of leaves. We have 5 leaves or 4 leaves. You cannot have a leaf that is 1.5. You can't. There's no such thing of a leaf that's called a leaf 1.5. You might say, oh, but you can have a leaf and another leaf that's cut in half. Yeah, in nature, that's not how it works. A tree does not grow one leaf and a half. It just grows 1 or 2 leaves, okay? So qualitative is a category. Sometimes we say qualitative as the quality of something, but also what falls in category is the size, okay? So someone can be 183 centimeters or 183.555 centimeters. It's qualitative, okay? So the qualitative is the size of the leaves. As I said, the leaves can be 3.2 centimeters or it can be 5.500. Okay, so comment on the student's results. In your answer, you should use data from the table and your own knowledge. Always there is a question using your own knowledge. Okay, so the solution that has no minerals lacking has the most leaves. Okay, obviously because the plant has all the minerals so it can grow in ideal conditions. The solution that has no minerals lacking has the darkest green color. So if it has no minerals lacking, meaning it has all the minerals. So obviously it will have chlorophyll, so it'll give it a rich green color. The solution that lacks nitrates resulted in small yellow leaves. This is because nitrates are required for amino acids, which are needed to make chlorophyll. However, the results are not reliable since the sample size is small. He didn't do this on 1,000 leaves or 10,000 leaves. He only did it on maybe it was 4 jars, I believe, and each 5, so maybe he did it on 20 leaves in total, which is a very small number, making the results unreliable. Okay, final question. So, carbon dioxide can be added to a greenhouse to increase the yield of a crop plant. Design an investigation to find the carbon dioxide concentration needed for maximum crop yield. Include experimental details in your answer and write in full sentences. So, firstly, use 3 glass houses, each with a different concentration of carbon dioxide. The plants used must be of the same species and size. The plants in the greenhouse must be exposed to the same temperature, sunlight, and soil because soil provides nutrients, so they must have the same amount of nutrients. Okay? The mass of the plants will be measured before and after the experiment so that you can see the different results and you can make some comparisons. The plants must be in the greenhouse for 7 days. It's always important to state the time. You have to always state the time. Then to increase the reliability of the results, I will repeat the experiment at each concentration. Thank you so much for listening, and this is the final part.